Is this on? Can I welcome everyone to have a seat?
And we are live, by the way.
We're streaming, so we're going to start on time. That can go underneath. Unfortunately, the musicians are on that side. If you'd like to sit over there wrap up, Bill? Yeah. Wherever you'd like. They're going to start.
Bill, move down so we get more.
No, Bill, you still. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for starting us off with such beautiful music. We have Bonnie, who's Ira's niece, Bob, her husband, and Truman Boulard from Dickinson. Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for being here today to honor and celebrate the life of Ira M. Wheatley. And a special welcome to everyone who's watching from afar in Washington, California, Ohio. We appreciate you being with us. Each of you are here because you had a special relationship with Ira Wheatley or one of his family members. Some of you knew him as Dad, Papa, Ira, Mr. Wheatley, Uncle Ira, or some, the Big I. Today we would like to celebrate my dad through music and the memories of family and friends. My memory is titled Music Man. I have many wonderful memories of my dad, but my favorite is the music he loved and shared with us. And he loved all kinds of music. My earliest memory is of proudly sitting in the front pew of Sparta Methodist Church, where my dad was the minister. I was 4 or 5 years old and my black patent leather shoes were kicking on the pew. I listened to the service, well, a little. However, I do remember, as soon as Dad started leading those hymns, in his beautiful tenor voice, I tuned right in. I learned to sing those hymns along with my dad, and he loved singing hymns. He grew up the son of a minister, and he knew most of them by heart. He still sang those hymns in the last few years of his life. The nurses at the nursing home shared with me how much they enjoy hearing him sing songs from his bed at the home. Dad and Mom loved to sing together too, and in harmony. And they sounded pretty darn good, I thought. We took many vacations by car, and during those vacations, up and down the roads in West Virginia or Pennsylvania, Mom and Dad would sing oldies and goodies from their earlier years. We all learned to sing the words to The Light of a Silvery Moon, Bicycle Built for Two, I've Got Tuppence, and many more. As we got older, we joined in and even branched out to singing rounds together. What fun we had rolling along in the music mobile. In addition to singing, Dad loved to listen to music too. Well, and of course, sing along. I can hear to this day the Broadway shows that he would play on his record player as he worked around the house. I smile as I think of him belting out, I could have danced all night, from My Fair Lady, or Some Enchanted Evening, from South Pacific. When I finally listened to the words of those tunes and the oldies we sang in the car, I realized what a tremendous romantic my dad was. I also think of my dad as a music man because he loved so many kinds of music. When I got a bit older, my mom and dad took us to orchestra concerts to introduce us to classical music. I liked watching the musicians and seeing what they were wearing, what their hair looked like, but I wasn't very excited about the music. Over time, and after many concerts, I started enjoying classical music, much to my surprise, and with gratitude to my parents. Later on, when record players became history, Dad got himself a CD player. He carried it around as he worked on his construction, baking, or gardening projects. And I can see him now, out in the garage, bandana around his head, white t-shirt, white pants, working very intently on whatever project he was working on, with Vivaldi or Bach swirling around him as he worked. When Dad retired and moved to North Carolina, he joined a chorus because he loved to sing. During a trip to visit us, he told me that he would have to practice while he was visiting. He went out to the car each day in the dead of winter during their visit and spent an hour practicing. I mentioned that we would love to have him come in and practice and hear that. And I learned an amazing fact about my dad, Ira Wheatley. He could not read music. He would listen to the music on a CD and learn his part. I was astounded. My dad, who loved music and sing like an angel, could not read music? That was my dad, though. If he was interested in something and didn't know how to do it, he would teach himself. So my dad, a music-loving man, taught himself to sing all those songs so he could do the thing he loved most, sing, sing, sing. I wish I had thanked my dad for all that music he shared with me and told him what happiness it brought me when we sang together as a family, or I had the chance to hear his beautiful tenor voice. But maybe, just maybe, he knew that the smiles on our faces meant we loved singing together, listening to his lovely tenor voice, and hearing his music while he worked. To celebrate my dad, the music man, we invite you to join us in singing. I called it a bicycle built for two. Truman says it's called Daisy Bell. I'm sure he's right. And the words are in your program. Carl, Carl and Kennedy are going to help us sing, lead us.
Stylish marriage, I can't afford a carriage, but you'll look sweet upon the seat of a bicycle built for two. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer too. I am crazy, all for the love of you. When the fall is over, get married in the clover, and you'll look sweet upon the seat of a bicycle built for two.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Wheatley Heckman, and I'm one of Ira's grandsons. It's impossible to summarize how much Ira, or as we called him, Papa, meant to me, but this will be my best attempt. As far as I can tell from the examples I've been given, a grandparent's job in a child's life is to give them as much as possible while they can. These include experiences, joy, wisdom, love, and much, much more. If that is the benchmark of a great grandparent, Papa certainly was one. During the time our lives were intertwined, he passed down so many of these things to me. The first thing he gave me was wonderful childhood memories. In my early childhood, we would visit Grammy and Papa in Brevard, a beautiful mountain town in North Carolina, where we went on many adventures, like walking, swimming near waterfalls, feeding fish at a hatchery, and trudging through a creek that ran through their front yard. These things were magical as a kid. One time during a visit during Christmas, Papa even took me outside to see the fresh reindeer prints in the snow. A sign not only that Santa was real, but definitely visited us the night before, and a piece of evidence that helped me hold on to Santa for a long time. Some would say way too long. Later on, Grammy and Papa moved to Carlisle, a town much closer, which meant we could be visited more often. The fond memories continued with hikes on the Appalachian Trail, walks around Boiling Spring, Easter egg hunts in their beautiful gardens, table tennis in their gigantic basement, and much to my dad's delight, lots and lots of Frisbee. One day I got to drive his riding lawnmower around the front yard. This only happened once, but as a teenager, man, it was awesome. Papa was also a great baker who made quite possibly the greatest bread of all time. It's fitting that no one can remember the recipe, because I'm sure any attempt to recreate it would be futile. He also made handmade ice cream. I have vivid memories of him sitting on a stool in the garage, mixing a manual wooden blender, wearing a tucked-in t-shirt, and very, very short LL Bean shorts. Mixing the heck out of the salt and milk and whatever else was in that barrel. All I know is that it was delicious. Whenever we went to visit Grammy and Papa, I also knew we'd be eating well. One time, while visiting, my sister Shova and I were playing basketball. All of a sudden, we see Papa walk out of the front door, straight towards us, wearing an outfit very similar to his ice cream mixing outfit. To our surprise, he asked to play with us. We were both very hesitant to let our grandfather, who at this point was in his late 70s, play such an active game with us, but we couldn't say no. This is no exaggeration. He could not miss. Hook shot, swish. Underhand, swish. Granny style, swish. Two-handed set shot, swish. His game had not changed much since the 40s, but he didn't have to. It's also rumored that he was offered a contract with the Harlem Globetrotters, but he turned it down because it would interfere with his bell choir practice. Papa also passed down lots of wisdom to me. When I was 6, Grammy and Papa and my family took a trip to Baltimore, where we went to the zoo, and we saw pelicans. Papa turned to me and said words I still remember. He said, "A wonderful bird is the pelican. Its beak can hold more than its belly can." My brain exploded. Not only was this fascinating, but it rhymed, and I still remember it to this day. Papa was a very, very funny person. He was a great storyteller, a great speaker, and I studied all of this as a young man. He always enjoyed sharing funny stories and jokes with us, which were always followed by his big bouncing laugh. I'm sure we can all hear it in our brains right now. I enjoyed making him laugh, but I always enjoyed hearing him share funny moments with us. A lesson that life is also often humorous and also best shared with others. He once gave me much more profound wisdom in my life. In my early 20s, there came a time where my personal pursuits could no longer be pursued in college, which is a nice way of saying I dropped out to pursue comedy. I'd be the first and only dropout in the entire immediate family. A family that was very, very highly educated. A family filled with bachelor degrees, master's degrees, PhDs, professors, educators, and so many other more impressive scholastic accomplishments. The Wheatley family has more degrees than some thermometers. On a trip home, the time came where I would have to break the news to Professor Ira Wheatley, PhD. I was terrified and expected nothing but disapproval. To my surprise, when I told him, he smiled, patted me on the shoulder, and said, "Good for you, do it. Abraham Lincoln had no formal education, and look how he turned out." I'm no Lincoln, but that sentiment did and still does mean the world to me. The final and most significant thing Papa gave me was all of you in this room, my family. I was adopted as a baby and joined the Wheatley Heckman family as a result. The biggest and most pivotal life event in my life. Grammy and Papa were not only huge contributors to the adoption of me and my sisters, but champions of adoption and major supporters for the years to come. In fact, 4 of his 6 grandchildren were adopted. Even though we did not share genes, there was never any doubt that he wasn't our grandfather. I was given both the Wheatleys and the Heckmans and the greatest collection of caring, supportive, and fun family members I could have ever asked for. Excuse me. He helped me bring my family to me, and he and Grammy brought our family together so many times. Thanksgivings, birthdays, Easter, so many great times that I will cherish forever. Even in the last years of his life, although the nature of our visits changed, from big parties to quiet, reflective visits, he still managed to bring us all together. Ira Wheatley was a loving father, a wonderful grandfather, and a loving and loyal husband, and a person who brought a lot of light and love to the lives who passed to the lives of me, and will be, I can't even talk, excuse me. I will strive to live up to the example he set of what it means to be a father, a husband, a grandfather, and a person. Although my time with him is over, he will be with me and all of us always. I'm glad he now gets to dance again with Grammy. I love Papa, and thank you for everything.
What a fine selection of people here today. How great is this? Mine's called the Big I. I called him I because Heckmans love nicknames. I called Alice Al. I was 25. It was the summer of 1979. Ira and Alice were flying to Ponape, which is a little island in Micronesia, to visit their daughter. And this was right in the middle of our term as Peace Corps volunteers. I was completely terrified and intimidated. First of all, he was Dr. Ira Wheatley. He was a college professor. He steps off the plane and he's got this college professor beard. And I'm thinking, oh my, what's going on? Since I had just spent a year camping out as a Peace Corps volunteer, I had very long hair, a ZZ Top beard, and orange teeth from the beetle nut. Making a first impression was not probable. So, off the plane they step. Oh boy. I had booked a room away from where they were staying in a separate hotel. This seemed appropriate since we weren't married, we were only engaged. But I insisted on the way to their hotel that I would stay with them and he would pay for a hotel room for his daughter and myself. Sweet! I thought I might like this guy. Over the 43 years I knew him, he was always a reassuring and helpful presence in all our family's lives. He was a wonderful papa to our 3 kids, making ice cream bread and cookies. He had basketball goals and ping pong tables for them to enjoy. When we moved to our house, there was a wall, a big wall full of wallpaper that was horrendous. And our goal that day was to remove the wallpaper. That project became a 2-week ordeal where we painted the entire house. The entire house. It was also the genesis of Ira Wheatley as an adjective, as in, did you do an Ira Wheatley job? I have not been known for doing diligent work. Over the years, we had many enjoyable times. Senator baseball games, rides to Pete's, Boiling Springs Tavern dinners, Father's Day at the Hershey Hotel, and many family reunions in July and November. Cataracts. Okay. I like Guinness beer. I, as in not me, I like Guinness beer. He liked coffee, ice cream, crab cakes, Panera cheddar cheese soup, and walks at Children's Lake. Most of all, you couldn't throw her in the dumpster. He loved Alice. You had to be there last night. Maybe I should explain that. Okay.
No, just go ahead.
Okay. He loved Alice, his family, and all his grandkids. And they were lucky to have him as a papa. I wish he could have met Cameron. Where is Cameron? Oh. He would have loved Cameron. Okay, so the end. This is the end. When we were going through some pictures to get ready for the slideshow, we ran into their annual, Alice and Ira's annual Christmas card from 2003. And I thought, I hope I can get through this, that you would want to hear it. Because this is quintessential. That's the Christmas card. He wrote at the end, most of all, we are repeatedly heartened as we look down the road by the unwavering love and support of our families and by the countless ways in which our lives have been enriched and sustained through knowing each and all of you. In knowing each and all of you. So, well, you did the same for us. So,
Hi, everybody. So nice to see you all here today. So I have the honor of reading the words of Mary Virginia DeMonte. She wrote a wonderful piece, and it is called Remembering Ira. How I wish I could be with you as we celebrate the life of my amazing brother. Unfortunately, at age 89, my traveling days are over. But I will be with you in spirit, and I will be remembering and celebrating with you in Tacoma, Washington. Remembering a 10-year-old boy who loved to impress his family and friends and terrify his little sister by climbing out into the steep roof of our parsonage in Elkton, New Jersey, while his parents were unsuspecting in the house below. A brother who loved to find ways to shock his little sister, who was a prim and proper little girl. A teenager who often amazed his adoring public with the death-defying feat of diving into the bay from a very tall building at the dock in Crisfield, Maryland, while his sister looked on in horror. A person who excelled at everything: academics, music, athletics, leadership, and who was loved and admired by young and old. A person who had the beautiful ability to relate to any group, whether young or old. The only exception was with his sister. We were not good friends as we were growing up together, and we would run into each other in high school. Ira would act as if he didn't know me. A child who, through his charm, knew how to get what he wanted, and as an adult expressed to me regret, admitting how spoiled he knew he was. I assured him his charm was a gift that I no longer held against him. A kid who used his intelligence and charm to convince our skeptical dad that dancing was okay, and by inviting him to a party where Ira knew he'd be showing off his jitterbugging skills and proving to Dad that he didn't have to worry about too much body contact. A person who worked hard and gave every endeavor his best. He had a brilliant mind, but he wasn't afraid of physical labor. As a teenager, he worked a couple of summers on Major Todd's boat hauling watermelons to Baltimore. The boat docked in one of the more questionable sections of Baltimore. Some of the older men worried about what young Ira might see as they passed by the burlesque houses. The story they laughingly brought back was that while they were enjoying the billboards out front, Ira was commenting on the interesting stonework on the buildings. A brother who, when he went away to college in 1947, changed completely his relationship with me. This may have been because our mother was diagnosed that fall with a terminal illness, and Ira knew how devastating this was to his 14-year-old sister. A young girl who welcomed this new relationship, whatever the reason. As Ira's world expanded, He shared with me new ideas that led me wanting to stretch my own thinking, thus became one of the closest and most treasured relationships of my life. The generous Icelands, my mom's family, whose college graduation gift to Ira was a trip out west to the West Coast for Dad and me so we could attend Ira's graduation and Alice and Ira's wedding. I was thrilled to be asked to be maid of honor in the wedding, and Ira's best friend, Roy DeMonte, was the best man. The only time I was able to prove my brother wrong, Ira could tell I was liking this best man a lot, and he warned me not to get interested. Roy was the person who would never marry. And there had been several young women who tried to change his mind. So I never mentioned to Ira and Alice over the next 3 years that Roy and I were in contact. And he and Alice were very surprised when Roy and I announced our engagement. Roy and I were married the following year, giving Ira and me one more reason to remain close for the rest of our lives. The fact that we lived close geographically for only 4 years over the next 70. However, even before the advent of texting, we were always in touch, sharing the ups and downs of marriage, of parenthood, occupations, and life. We visited as often as possible, and the DeMonte kids always look forward to visits with the Wheatley kids. Ira's surprise arrival at the hospital all the way from Pennsylvania when I had emergency surgery in 1993. Or his daily phone calls in 1997 when I suffered a bout of clinical depression as I was faced with Roy's final illness and approaching death. Unlike many well-meaning people in my life, he didn't tell me to snap out of it. He just listened and let me know he cared. Ira's final gift to me, a visit he made to Washington State a few years ago. Krista and Kennedy warned me that there was a decline in his memory, but I wouldn't believe that that was possible with him. I realized immediately when he arrived the change in him, although he struggled to remain his charming self. It was clear the trip was difficult and even scary for him, but one he was determined to make while he still could. And finally, remembering how Ira has enriched my life. Life seems a little lonelier knowing he's no longer with us. As I cherish my memories, I'm comforted by a few simple words of Dr. Seuss that I heard quoted recently. Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened.
Good afternoon. It's wonderful to see you all. I don't know if this is, can you hear me? Yep. It's wonderful to see you all here this afternoon. I'm going to read the 23rd Psalm, but before I do, my memory of Dad's a little different because I actually hadn't seen him for 6 years. So the last time I saw him, he was actually still living in an independent apartment using his walker and telling good stories. Since he was a pastor, I'm sure he read this psalm a lot. Before I started, I just wanted to share a little bit about the psalm. It was written by somebody who actually worked as a shepherd. And he compared being a shepherd, watching the sheep, to how God can take care of us if we'll let him. I hope these words encourage you this afternoon. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over.
Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen.
Okay, it's me again. I'm not Carl. I'm a last-minute addition to the program, but watching my family members try and get through their talk, I'm like, why did I do that? Okay, I'll do my best. So I want to talk about 3 gifts that my dad gave to me. As you all know, my dad was really extraordinary, and it's sometimes a challenging person. He gave me many gifts, and I just want to share 3 of them with you. So the first is my nickname. My dad called me Powerful Peanut my whole life. And as a little girl, it meant I was small but strong. And I took great pride in this nickname, in my strength. And it really encouraged me to tackle physically heavy tasks. I carried weighty suitcases on our vacation. I would carry more grocery bags than that I should handle. And when the previous homeowner of our house left almost 1,000 cement blocks in our basement, I carried hundreds of them up the stairs along with my brothers, and we used them to build our carport. So this was a bit unusual at the time. It was common for a well-meaning man to see me reach for a heavy object, and he'd say, "I got that for you, little lady." And I'd say, "No, thanks, I got it." And I'd heft it up, gleeful at his surprise. As I got older and my dad still called me Powerful Peanut, it started to suggest other kinds of strength, that I could think well and that I could work well with people, and that I was imaginative and I could create something new out of thin air. And this steady but very subtle encouragement really boosted my belief in what I could accomplish, and it stayed with me my entire life. The second gift is showing me the joy of hard work. So my dad, as we know, really enjoyed intellectual work, and he completed his PhD program in a record-breaking 3 years in Iowa. But he had a particular appreciation for hard physical labor. I think he developed this respect growing up in Crisfield, a fishing village, and watching industrious fishermen get up at dawn, work hard all day long, and spending several summers loading and unloading hundreds of watermelons on a boat. I watched my dad teach himself carpentry, and he built entire new bedrooms for my sister in one house and my brothers in another house. As a teenager, I recall many weekends where I carefully laid out my beach towel in our backyard to work on my tan, while my dad and my mom were slaving in the garden for hours under the really hot sun. And I thought they were totally crazy. Why are they working so hard? But guess how I spend my weekends now? Repainting the walls in my house, learning how to use a sanding machine so I can refinish my wood floors, or out digging in my garden. And lastly, the gift of being true to who you are inside. So my dad rarely talked to his kids about how to live our lives, but through his own life, he was a really powerful role model. He was by far the most honest person I've ever met, even to a fault. He really walked his talk. He acted on what he believed, even if sometimes it made other people angry, or it meant he had to stand alone, or it made his life difficult. One example, my dad became a Methodist minister, as you know, in a family of Methodist ministers. This was an easy, very accepted, approved path. But he felt very strongly drawn to other religions. And after about 10 years as a minister, he made the very brave decision to quit the ministry and get his PhD in religious studies to follow this new calling. In the short term, this decision really strained our family's finances, and I learned later it even strained my parents' marriage. But my parents were deeply committed to each other. They made it work, and it was the right thing to do. It led to him being much happier, and it set an example for my mom to pursue her own career years later. So witnessing my dad's life really taught me the importance of listening deeply to your own heart and following where it leads you. To thine own self be true. As I grew older, I realized this was and is an incredibly rare thing. These gifts from my dad and many others to help make me who I am, I hope to pass them along to my daughter Elena. Thank you, Dad, from the bottom of Powerful Peanuts' heart.
Hello, I am Carl, not Kennedy, just in case there's any confusion. Let's get that straightened out right now. One of Dad's most impressive characteristics was that he was committed to doing the right thing all the time. Doesn't that sound exhausting? And just terrifying. Reflecting his focus on the right thing, this plaque traveled with Mom and Dad from one home to the next. It has a paraphrase of a Mark Twain quote on it. Always do right. This will gratify some people and astonish the rest. I feel like Dad's sitting there with that sitting there and okay, that's Dad. Now, people have different views of what doing the right thing means. And we four kids sometimes thought that doing the right thing would have meant Dad working a little less and playing with us a little more. However, Dad grew up in church in a different era, and he had internalized the slogan, "Idle hands are the devil's playground." In fact, he repeated that slogan to me once. That really made an impression on me as a teenager, because I was very fond of being idle back then. Before I tell you what Dad did do because of his drive to do the right thing, let me tell you what he didn't do. For years, Dad thought drinking was morally suspect, so he never spent his evenings hanging out at bars. He never spent hours golfing. He never spent the family's money on gambling or frivolous purchases. Never. Dad also didn't watch TV. Let me say that again. Dad did not watch TV. He did not watch sports. And he didn't really play except on vacation. He would pause by a group of us playing a board game or me watching TV show or sports. He'd make a comment or two, and then he'd get back to work. So what was Dad doing if he wasn't at the bar golfing, gambling, or playing board games with his kids? Well, the Protestant work ethic says work is virtuous. So Dad was working. Our father was a hard-working man, all day, every day. In Iowa City, Dad worked night and day on his PhD. He finished in 3 years, which, as Kennedy said, is like half the time it takes most people to finish a PhD. Krista says her memory of Dad is the sound of a typewriter from behind a closed door from those years. Dad also exercised every day. Before jogging became a thing, Dad was running in place 2,000 right feet every day in the cramped workshop of our Grant Street house. He added calisthenics and weights to the mix. He had various exercise machines over the years, a stationary bike, rowing machine, cross-country ski machine, and so on. For the first half of his career, Dad walked or biked 4 to 6 blocks to work, and of course, he would be one of the first people in the office because that's the right thing to do, right? At lunch every day, and I want you to think about this, because I think about what I do at lunch every day. Dad would walk down the 7 flights of stairs from the Prey-Herald office building, walk back up those 7 flights of stairs, walk down 7 flights of stairs, and then walk back up the 7 flights of stairs, 2 steps at a time. Right? Why? Because Dad believed taking care of yourself is the right thing to do. After work, Dad was almost always working. In our house on Grant Street, as Kennedy mentioned, put in a rec room, put in a laundry room. It was an old house. He put in lots and lots of house jacks to try to level the house, put in new bedrooms or renovated bedrooms every summer until we moved to Whitmire. At Whitmire, he put in the bedroom that Kevin and I slept in. He installed 2 50-foot-long retaining walls made out of railroad ties. That set the stage for a huge 3-level garden. So when I picture him at the Whitmire house, he's always in motion. He's positioning and leveling those railroad ties, driving steel rods through them to connect them securely, digging holes for Mom's 100-plus rose bushes, planting 2 new trees, carrying firewood, building a divider in the living room, or working in the workshop on some house project. Are you tired yet? Then Mom and Dad designed and built a new house on Voorhees Road in Ann Arbor. So Dad dug dozens more holes for rose bushes and many of Mom's other flowers. In the basement, he built storage shelves that I swear would support an automobile. They're the most, ridiculously over-engineered things I'd ever seen. At Arlington Drive here in Carlisle, Dad was still wrestling enormous rocks in place to create what were glorious gardens of lilies. I remember him talking one day to me about how he had worked 14 hours that day in the garden, and he was in his 70s. But doing the right thing wasn't just about working hard, it's about doing jobs the right way. He worked at the bookstore while at the College of Pacific, and he was known then and later in life for packing packages so safely and securely, you might need a machete to get them open. We called Dad Tidy Man because he believed the right way to live was keeping every item in its place and doing jobs just so. Old railroad ties are not perfectly straight, so Dad shaved them down until they were. And he made those retaining walls perfectly straight and level. When Krista and Bill moved into their Columbia house, they had these long, rough-hewn wooden beams on the ceiling, but they didn't like how they worked, so Dad got way up on a ladder and spackled those rough-hewn wooden beams until they looked like drywall. Dad sometimes got carried away with his tidy man tendencies. For example, Dad helped Amy and I once by waterproofing the garage shingles under the soil line. Our house and garage were covered with cedar shingles. But the messy and irregular look of those cracks between the cedar shingles just got to Tidy Man Ira, right? So I got home from work one day only to discover that my father had been caulking in the cracks between each pair of cedar shingles on one side of our garage. Now, even Tidy Man Ira realized this was probably overkill. So after he sheepishly showed me his handiwork, we agreed that was probably enough caulking. Doing the right thing was also about being careful with money. When we lived on Grant Street, this meant that our dining room table was a picnic table, a nicely varnished one, but a picnic table that Dad had built. Being frugal also meant we drank carnation powdered milk in the early years, yellow container, blue snap-on lid. Have to shake it, boom, 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 right? To get it mixed thoroughly and so there aren't any lumps when you drink it, because those are gross. Those were terrible. We kids just like lived in fear of those lumps. But I digress, right? If you're a tight end, however, and you sit 4 children down to eat at a picnic table with all those spaces between the boards, it's probably only a matter of time before something goes very, very wrong for you. So one night at dinner, one of us spilled a whole glass of milk across the table, and that milk descended through those cracks and down onto people's legs. Now, Dad had a bit of a temper back then, and so let's just say he didn't handle all that messiness as calmly as he might wish he had. But hey, that's nothing compared to the time he got angry and tried to back the car out of the garage, without opening the garage door first. But I digress. Despite his frugality, doing the right thing also meant Mom and Dad being very generous, including supporting us through college, paying for family reunions, passing down cars, helping pay for cars for his children and grandchildren. Doing the right thing also meant Mom and Dad passing on their serious moral values, especially our responsibility to care for one another and care for the earth. They were serious about equal rights for everyone, regardless of so-called race or sexual orientation, and they got incensed about people being unfair or unkind. Doing the right thing also meant getting high-quality, high-value, and durable products and services. Dad wouldn't buy any old junk. He consulted Consumer Reports for appliances and listened to music on a high-end Bang & Olufsen stereo system. And he wouldn't listen to just any music, and certainly not that rock and roll noise. He listened to classical music, right? Mom and Dad listened to classical music. Ideally, classical music played really, really well on instruments that were hundreds of years old. Centuries old, made centuries ago. Doing the right thing did yield pleasure too, and for Dad, the right start to the morning meant good coffee brewed strong. Mom and Dad also liked chocolate, but doing the right thing with chocolate doesn't mean sitting around gobbling pedestrian milk chocolates, right? Well, that would never do, so they ate expensive dark chocolates stored in the freezer for optimal, tasty performance. And when Dad finally gave into the sinful evils of alcohol, he couldn't just drink any beer, right? He liked to drink a Guinness, as has come up. And perhaps to rationalize to himself having that the occasional beer was the right thing to do, Dad used to have on his bulletin board a clipping of an article explaining all the nutritional benefits of beer, of Guinness beer. Dad was really drinking that beer for its plentiful phytonutrients. Dad was so respected for working hard and doing the right thing. He'd only been at EMU a short time when the department voted to make him department chair. He was the department chair for almost the entire remainder of his career, except during periods when he was elevated to acting vice provost for academic affairs and acting dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. From the stories that Dad told, it's clear to me Dad didn't get promoted to those full-time positions because he was outspoken about doing the right thing to promote the academic mission of the university. You see, some of the higher-ups at Eastern Michigan University were jealous of all the attention that the athletic programs of nearby University of Michigan received. So they dreamed of a glorious athletic complex for EMU, including a domed football stadium, despite EMU just being a MAC school with kind of a weak football record. But Ira Wheatley had no patience for that kind of nonsense or other schemes that weren't really fair or were not squarely focused on the well-being of students and faculty. Thus, it wasn't a surprise to me when Dad didn't get appointed as full-time dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, despite strong faculty support for him. He just wasn't one of the good old boys and just didn't play along. One of my proudest memories of Dad is that he was so well respected that a large contingent of faculty marched on the EMU president's house to protest Dad not getting appointed dean. Now, I've taught at a university for 28 years, and I can't fathom what would rile up our faculty enough to march en masse to the president's house and protest. That is astonishing. But for Dad, doing the right thing also meant continuing to speak out for what was right, even if you have paid a price in the past for doing so. Thus, when they lived here at Cumberland Crossing, Dad had read a lot about and was incensed by America's illegal invasion of Iraq. So even though this is a conservative part of the state and the home of the Army War College, And even though many of the residents were former military, Dad used to type up letters denouncing the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan, copy them, and distribute them to everybody's mailbox. This was not always appreciated. But Dad kept doing it because Dad believed it was right to speak out against wrong. Ira Mitchell Wheatley was a loving husband, father, father-in-law, and grandfather. He was excellent at the jobs he did, and he was a hell of a conscientious and hardworking person. So, Dad, we love you, and we know you're still with us in many ways. In closing, and because Mom and Dad loved to edit things, they were both really editors, I'd like to edit that Mark Twain quote, which, by the way, is just a paraphrase of the original being Ira Wheatley's son. I had to look it up, right? The phrase that's in the larger letters on this plaque is, always do right, and I'm sure that's what Dad cared most about. Funny as the quote is, I don't think he was trying to astonish anyone, and Dad was more hoping to help people than to gratify them. So, as we remember Ira Mitchell Wheatley's amazing life, let's remember that Ira believed that you should always do right because that will help some people and may inspire the rest. Dad believed you should always do right because that will help some people and may inspire the rest. Papa believed you should always do right because that will help some people and may inspire the rest. He believed you should
Always do right.
because,
It'll help some people and inspire the rest.
thank you.
So now, if you'll join us in singing Amazing Grace, the words are on your nice blue sheet right here. We'd like to open it up if there's anyone who would like to share a memory of Ira, Papa, Dad, Big Eye, all those guys. Come up. Come on, Denny. Come on down. We want to hear you.
Anybody that doesn't know me, I'm Denny Smith. My mother was the oldest of the Wheatley children. So, as a child, I was a rebellious preacher's kid, as my sisters and Aunt Mary can attest to. And I think one of the reasons my father tolerated that was the stories he used to tell me about young Ira. I have shared a few of those today, and we'll share a few others later as we repass. But I remember those stories, and they're funny. And it's funny how he became such a different person as he matured. And I remember the family reunions we had both as a child, because I knew him when he was young, relatively, and as an adult. We had wonderful times together. And I encourage all of you to do that with each other as you can, because time catches up with you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ann. I was actually Ira's last caregiver. And although I don't have the memories that you all had when he was young and hiking all over the place, we made our own. I used to come in 5 days a week, first thing in the morning, and he'd have had breakfast already, and I'd go get him, take him back to the room. We had our favorite little way of saying hello. I'd walk down the hall, he'd see me, and we both go, like that. He loved his music, as everybody has pointed out, and boy, did we belt it out. Me, usually off-key, him usually not, but I let him overdo me so people wouldn't notice. And he also had the sense of humor you've all talked about. Our favorite chore, our least favorite chore, was brushing teeth. And neither one of us liked it, but we knew we had to do it whether we wanted to or not. And we get to the end of it, and at this point Ira was not allowed to swallow certain things. And so we had a routine with the mouthwash. It was swish, swish, and spit. Except once in a while he swallowed. And I go, Mr. Wheatley, you're going to get me in trouble. And he laughed. I think he did it on purpose. So I have my own special relationship with Mr. Wheatley and the wonderful family that I got to meet. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
I wonder, before we leave, I just want to offer this blessing. God of many names, Spirit of love and life, moving within us, between us, and among us, upholding and connecting us all, the living, the dead, the generations to come. Thank you for the dear ones who gathered today to celebrate the life of Ira Mitchell Wheatley, husband, dad, father-in-law, papa, great-grandfather, brother, uncle, friend. We are grateful for his life and for the ways he will live on in the lives of all who loved him. Thank you for the memories shared this afternoon and all of the memories we will carry with us in the days to come. Spirit of love and life, abide with us. Provide us with the power of healing, the comfort and compassion of loving family and friends, and the assurance of peace. Amen.
I'd like to thank everyone again for joining us. We're so happy to have you here. We hope you'll join us at Fiddler's. The address is on the bottom there for a reception afterwards. Thank you.
One more song?
Yes. That one for us? Go, Truman.